In the previous lessons, we looked at various string methods. Now, let's talk about indexing in Python. Same concept works in other programming languages. When you want to access an item in a specific position in a collection, you want to do so by targeting the index of that very item. Remember when you're looking for a particular keyword or phrase in a textbook, you flip to the end of the textbook. The page we popularly call index, which shows a list of specific vocabulary words and the page number where you can find them. Likewise, an index in computer science is a position of a value in a collection. To access the value by index in a collection, we simply write the variable name that points to the collection followed by index, where the index is an integer value. Now let's take a look at some examples. I'm going to create a new file and I'll try to save it and title my file. We're going to call it tutorial 15, day 15. Let me just reduce this a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to declare my first variable, which is going to be string 1. Then I am going to write hello world as the value. Hello world. Okay, so this is my first variable, which is an object anyways. Now let's access one of the index. And to do that, I am going to say write another variable and call it first index. And we are going to target the string. Remember, in my description, I said you point the variable that contains the collection, which here is string 1. I'm just going to go ahead and say string 1. Now we need to reference the index. To reference index, all you need is angle brackets, open and close. Then we need to place our integer in it. Now all of those things work in a very dramatic way, and I'm going to show you why. For me to access our first integer, or let's even say, for instance, we put the value of 1. So now let's try to print. I'll just reference the print function, then call the first index, close my print function. I'm going to save. Let's try to run with F5 and see what we get. So you can see we get E. Now, where is E coming from? You can see that it is the second position. One thing I should point out is that in computer programming, index starts from 0. In other words, the 0 is our H. So let's check it out. Let's update this and just go ahead and put in 0. If I save and run it, let's see if we get our H. As you can see, here we have the H value. And this is really cool. So how about we check other values, right? What if we want the last value? Seriously, for us to really know the last value, it means that we need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But imagine you have a very long sentence, right? This might be very difficult for you to target. But before we even know a simpler way to count, let us take a look at something we can do again. So let's say you want to target the W. Of course, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, we start counting by 0. So you start your counting by 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, there's a space in between, 6. So let's check it out. Let's say we target 6. Hopefully, we should be right. So you can see we have our W, which is really, really cool. Now, I want us to declare another variable, but this time around, we're going to call it string 2. Now string 2, let's give it the value of alphabet. I'm going to close my string. Then what we need to do right now is let's see if it's possible for us to know how many letters without even counting it at all. There are several ways we can do this in Python. We can either use the length or we use the count method. But let's try to use one of those. Now, let's say I want to use another last index. I'm just going to say last index. Remember, I need to connect it. Last index. Then we need to be able to tell which is the last number. Right. So I'm just going to copy that. Let's even see if a count method will work. I'm going to call the print function. Then let's write a message so we know what we're doing. So this time around we are checking the total index, and I'm just going to put my comma there. Then let's reference this last index. So if I run my F5, let's see, count, take at least one argument. Okay, so it means that, let's see if we reposition and just put the value inside. Let's see if that will work. You can see this doesn't work instead. So I think the count works for list, it works for object. We're going to see how all of those work later, but let's use the length. Sorry, the length should be, let's use the length. This is actually length, but the abbreviation. If I run my F5, oh, nice. So you can see we have 8. Makes sense. Now, the reason why I said this is a bit tricky is because now we are checking the length and it's giving us 8. If we calculate or count the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, but we need to access the last one. If we put 8, for instance, in fact, let's just duplicate this. Let's call it maybe 2. And since we know 8 is our total number, let's try to call 8 the index of 8. Let's see if Python is going to throw us error. Let's repeat this. I'm just going to run F5. You see, Python is telling us that it is beyond the range, out of range, which means this our string is not up to 8. Or however, when we check it here, when we check the index is telling us that it is 8. In fact, let's just copy this and bring it here so that we know what we're doing. Then let's say get the last index. So we're checking for the last index. Okay, remember the value, the variable name is 2, has 2 at the end. If we run it again, F5, yeah, you can see we have the 8, but it's telling us 8 is out of range. It means that for us to get the last, we need to do some sort of calculation here. And what do I mean? So it means that here, we need to literally do 8 minus 1. Let's see if that works. 8 minus 1. You can as well ask me Why can't I just write 7? I'm going to show you why just in a while. You can see we get T, right, which is the last letter. It's cool. So what we are doing here makes a lot of sense. The reason why I can't add 7 here is because oftentimes when you're writing your code, you won't really know the exact number. You won't really know the exact number. So it is very important that you handle all of the value programmatically so that the programming language can do its work even while you are not there. So we are going to replace this. We're going to replace this. We're going to write this 8 minus 1 programmatically. So in other words, we need to just copy this lens, right? This lens is giving us this value. It's giving us 8, the lens, and just replace it with this. You can see? So we're just checking the total number of whatever is here. And if we run it, everything should still run fine. You can see you still get your T. If I go ahead and maybe add another, just something random to it, and I run my F5, it's going to give me the last alphabet, which is K. But imagine that then we had just the 8 here, right? It's not going to give us the right value. Something is going to be wrong. It's giving us T. Still the T, right? But what this lens does is it calculates the entire alphabet that you have in your value and minus it by 1, which gives you the value that you want. Now let's just go ahead and remove the excess that we had. Cool. And if we run it, everything should still look the same. Now there's a simpler way to actually check the last value, really. You mustn't really do the len, right? Let's look at a more simpler way to achieve our value. So I am just going to say you can actually achieve it just by -1, right? Which is the negative index. So we can just check for the last with the negative index. And if we run this just with the -1, and everything should work. If we run this, I say my F5, and you can see we have our T and we have the T in both places, which means it works. So in other words, there are possible ways that you can target specific item in a collection. But one thing to really remember is that the item is indexed start from 0 to whatever number of the total. So you can imagine it as if you're counting it normally, just minus it by 1. And it's going to give you the value just like the way the machine will interpret it. And at any point, you can reference the variable and use your angle bracket to target any part or any portion of your collection. Pretty much that's how we round it up on this one. If you like this tutorial, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on all our social media handles so that you can be notified every time we release a new tip. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.